There's a moment in an INFJ life that almost no one talks about. A moment when their empathy, the very thing that once defined them, suddenly goes quiet. Not because they stopped caring, not because they became cold, but because something inside them finally reached its limit. If you've ever wondered why the most empathetic personality type can switch off their emotional radar without warning, this is the part people never see coming. INFJs don't lose empathy the way others lose patience. They lose it the way a candle finally burns out after lighting everyone else's darkness for too long. They absorb pain, stabilize chaos, carry emotions no one even notices they're holding. And then, one day, their system hits overload. Their nervous system goes numb to survive. Their intuition shifts from, how do I help, to how do I protect myself? And the people around them feel the change immediately, even if they can't explain it. Because when an INFJ stops feeling empathy, it's not a personality shift, it's an emotional survival mechanism. If this resonates already, stay until the end, because the final point will expose the real reason INFJs disconnect, and why almost no one sees it coming. Before we begin, tell me in the comments, have you ever felt your empathy just switch off? Write the word numb so I know you're here. And if you're new, subscribe. You're about to understand yourself in ways no one ever explained. INFJs stop feeling empathy when they reach emotional burnout from carrying everyone else's feelings for too long. For most of their lives, INFJs move through the world like emotional tuning forks, picking up every shift in tone, every unspoken sadness, every fracture in someone else's spirit. They don't choose this, it chooses them. And for a while, they believe it's their purpose. They hold others' secrets, absorb their disappointments, soothe their wounds, and translate chaos into understanding. But there comes a moment when their inner world, once expansive and compassionate, starts to feel heavy. Too heavy. The empathy that once flowed effortlessly becomes a weight they can no longer carry. Not because they stopped caring, but because their system finally reached capacity. The burnout doesn't arrive loudly. It creeps in quietly, like fog settling over a landscape. They notice themselves feeling numb where they used to feel deeply. They stop reacting emotionally to things that once touched them. The INFJ begins to realize that the constant exposure to other people's emotional storms has drained them in ways they never acknowledged. Every empathetic response, every late-night comfort, every suppressed worry added another layer to their internal fatigue. Eventually, their mind steps in with a simple command: enough. Their empathy doesn't disappear. It shuts down to protect what's left. This emotional burnout transforms their inner world. Instead of absorbing emotions, they begin deflecting them. Instead of trying to fix everything, they step back. It's a forced reset, not a character change. Their detachment is the nervous system's way of saying, you've carried too much for too long. And while others may misinterpret this shift as coldness, the truth is far more complex. The INFJ heart didn't stop feeling. It simply refused to collapse under the weight of everyone else's pain. Their empathy returns, but only after they relearn how to protect their own. They detach because their nervous system becomes overwhelmed and needs to shut down to survive. INFJs don't detach because they want distance. They detach because their entire nervous system sends out an urgent warning: you cannot absorb one more emotion without breaking. For years, even decades, they've been the silent emotional buffer for everyone around them. They read rooms before stepping inside, mirror others' feelings without thinking, and hold tension in their bodies that doesn't even belong to them. Eventually, the overload becomes so constant, so relentless, that the INFJ internal wiring hits its maximum capacity. And when that happens, detachment isn't a choice. It's a survival instinct. The shutdown feels strange, even to the INFJ themselves. Things that once stirred empathy now barely register. Situations that once pulled at their heartstrings feel distant, muted, almost unreal. Their body takes over where their mind cannot, creating emotional distance as a defense mechanism. This automatic detachment is the nervous system's way of saying, if I don't protect you now, no one else will. It numbs the overload, erects boundaries they never managed to verbalize, and forces them into a state of quiet preservation. Not because they've become indifferent, but because they've reached their emotional threshold. During this phase, INFJs may feel guilty, confused, or unlike themselves. But this is the paradox. Their detachment is actually evidence of how deeply they've felt for too long. The shutdown is a reset, a necessary pause that allows their internal world to stabilize. Without it, they would drown in emotional input. People may misinterpret their withdrawal as coldness, but the truth is far more human. The INFJ isn't pulling away from others. They're finally returning to themselves, giving their nervous system the silence it desperately needs to find balance again. Their intuition reveals who has been draining them, triggering an automatic emotional withdrawal. INFJs don't suddenly pull back without a reason. Their intuition, the quiet radar that runs beneath their thoughts, begins detecting patterns they can no longer ignore. At first, they sense subtle imbalances, conversations that leave them tired instead of nourished, people who take comfort but never offer it, relationships that feel like emotional gravity pulling them downward. Their intuition gathers these small signals, threading them together until the truth becomes impossible to unsee. And when that truth lands, it hits with the weight of recognition. This person is draining me, and I didn't notice how much until now. Once the INFJ intuition exposes the emotional leak, withdrawal happens almost instantly. It doesn't rise from anger or resentment, it rises from clarity. The INFJ begins to see exactly who has been siphoning their energy, who has been relying on their empathy as a constant supply, who only shows up to take. This isn't something they analyze consciously, it's something they feel. Their body tightens around certain people. Their mind grows distant in certain conversations. Their heart stops extending itself where it once stretched endlessly. It's as if their intuition flips a switch that says, "Protect yourself now." This automatic emotional retreat is not meant to punish anyone. It is the INFJ returning to equilibrium after a long period of imbalance. The same intuition that once guided them to help now guides them to preserve. They become quieter, harder to reach, more selective with their energy. People who relied on their constant emotional availability sense the shift immediately, though they may not understand it. But the truth is simple. Once an INFJ sees who drains them, their inner world refuses to keep bleeding. Their intuition becomes their shield, and withdrawal becomes their way back to themselves. They stop absorbing emotions when they realize their empathy is being exploited or taken for granted. For most of their lives, INFJs absorb emotions without question. They feel what others feel, sense what others hide, and soothe what others release. But there comes a moment when something inside them shifts. They begin to notice a pattern. The same people who rely on their empathy never seem to consider its cost. They return to the INFJ again and again, pouring out their fears, frustrations, and chaos, without ever wondering how much weight they're adding to someone else's spirit. And when the INFJ finally sees this clearly, when they realize their empathy is being used as free emotional labor, something deep inside them shuts off almost instantly. Not out of malice, but out of self-preservation. The INFJ stops absorbing emotions the way a sponge stops absorbing water once it's drenched. Their system reaches saturation, and their boundaries rise naturally, quietly, firmly, without explanation. They stop mirroring the feelings in front of them. They stop offering silent comfort. They stop tuning in to the emotional frequency of people who have mistaken their compassion for obligation. Instead of bending toward others, they stand still. Instead of absorbing, they observe. Instead of feeling responsible for everyone's emotional state, they finally recognize that some people never intended to offer anything back. This realization often comes with a kind of cold clarity. Empathy is a gift, and not everyone deserves access to it. The INFJ learns that some people only value their presence when it benefits them. They learn that empathy, when unreciprocated, becomes a form of self-erasure. And so their internal world adjusts. They disengage emotionally, not because they lost their ability to care, but because caring without boundaries was destroying them. Their heart becomes selective, their intuition sharper, their energy guarded. And in that shift, they reclaim the part of themselves that once gave too freely, choosing, finally, to feel for themselves before feeling for anyone else. Their mind shifts into protection mode, prioritizing self-preservation over emotional connection. There comes a moment when an INFJ mind, after years of absorbing emotions and overextending compassion, finally intervenes with a quiet but unshakable command: protect yourself first. This shift doesn't happen because the INFJ stops caring. It happens because caring without limits has pushed them to the edge of emotional depletion. Their mind, always intuitive and highly perceptive, recognizes the danger long before they consciously do. It begins redirecting their energy inward, pulling them away from emotional entanglements that once felt effortless. The same brain that once processed everyone else's feelings now starts filtering, blocking, and shielding. Not to disconnect from the world, but to keep the INFJ from disappearing inside it. This protection mode feels like a soft but firm barrier rising around their inner world. They stop engaging in emotional caretaking by default. They stop deciphering unspoken pain for people who never reciprocated. They stop offering empathy to those who only saw it as a resource to mine. Their responses grow shorter, their availability less automatic, their emotional presence more controlled. It isn't coldness, it's regulation. Their mind chooses silence where it once offered comfort, distance where it once offered understanding. Even their body feels different, calmer, heavier, grounded, as if it's finally reclaiming space that was slowly stolen by constant emotional involvement. What people rarely understand is that this shift is not rejection, it's recovery. The INFJ realizes that emotional connection cannot come at the cost of their mental stability. So their mind prioritizes self-preservation, teaching them a truth they resisted for years. You cannot pour into others while you are running dry. In protection mode, they rebuild themselves piece by piece, learning what drains them, what strengthens them, and who deserves access. And once this shift happens, the INFJ no longer offers unfiltered empathy. They offer what is balanced, intentional, and safe for their own heart. They no longer resonate with others' emotions when they've been repeatedly misunderstood or dismissed. INFJs don't disconnect from people easily. Their entire nature is built on empathy, attunement, and emotional resonance. But when they spend months or years offering understanding to people who never return it, something inside them begins to change. Being misunderstood isn't just uncomfortable for an INFJ, it's destabilizing. Every time their feelings are minimized, every time their intentions are questioned, every time their depth is dismissed as too much, a small fracture forms in the emotional bridge between them and the world. Eventually, those fractures add up, and the INF mind delivers a quiet verdict. Stop feeling for people who never felt for you. The resonance that once came naturally now shuts down like a dimming light. This shift is subtle at first. The INFJ notices they're no longer moved by the same emotional cues. They stop absorbing tension in the room. They stop mirroring someone's sadness automatically. They stop carrying burdens that were never theirs. It's not numbness, it's clarity. Their system learns that aligning with the emotions of people who repeatedly invalidate them is a form of self-betrayal. So the resonance fades, not because the INFJ lost their empathy, but because their spirit refuses to invest it where it has been neglected or rejected. What once felt like a gift now feels like a cost they cannot afford. And as this emotional resonance fades, the INFJ gains a kind of inner strength that others rarely expect. They begin prioritizing their own emotional truth over the noise of other people's misunderstandings. They trust their perception instead of fighting to be seen. They stop trying to translate themselves to minds that were never listening. In this state, their empathy becomes selective, precise, intentional, reserved only for those who value it. The rest of the world may call this withdrawal, but for the INFJ, it is liberation. It is the moment they finally stop sacrificing themselves to be understood. Their empathy returns only after they rebuild their boundaries, identity, and emotional clarity. When an INFJ empathy shuts down, it's not gone forever, it's in recovery. It retreats inward, like a wounded animal protecting itself after being stretched too thin for too long. And in that quiet space, something transformative happens. The INFJ begins rebuilding the parts of themselves that were slowly worn down by emotional overload. Their boundaries, once porous from years of giving without receiving, start to solidify. Their identity, once blurred from adapting to everyone else's needs, begins to sharpen. Their emotional clarity, once drowned beneath the noise of other people's feelings, slowly rises back to the surface. Only when these pieces are restored does empathy return, not as a reflex, but as a choice. This rebuilding phase is often misunderstood. From the outside, the INFJ may seem distant, detached, or different, but internally, they're reconnecting to themselves in ways they haven't been able to in years. They reflect on what drained them, who drained them, and why they allowed it. They begin to separate their emotions from the emotions of others, recognizing that empathy without boundaries becomes self-destruction. They learn to say no. They learn to step back. They learn that their emotional world deserves the same level of care they've always given away so freely. This internal restructuring isn't dramatic. It's steady, intentional, and deeply healing. And once this reconstruction is complete, the INF empathy doesn't just return, it evolves. It becomes wiser, more selective, more aligned with their truth. They no longer absorb everything. They choose what to hold. They no longer lose themselves in others. They meet people without abandoning themselves. Their empathy becomes a gift again, not a burden. It flows from a place of strength rather than depletion. And those who experience the INF after this transformation notice something unmistakable. Their compassion is still profound, but now it is protected, guided by boundaries, supported by identity, and anchored in clarity. There comes a point in an INFJ's life when losing empathy isn't a failure. It's a warning signal that they've carried too much, felt too deeply, and absorbed more than any one person should. And when that empathy finally returns, it comes back stronger, clearer, and protected by boundaries no one will ever cross so easily again. This journey from overload to clarity is not weakness, it's evolution. It's the moment an INFJ stops being shaped by the world and starts shaping the world around them. If you listened closely, you probably felt pieces of your own story woven into every point. The burnout, the shutdown, the rebuilding. And that's because INFJs don't lose empathy, they reclaim it. They learn who deserves it, who never did, and how to protect the heart that once tried to feel everything at once. This chapter isn't the end of their empathy, it's the beginning of using it wisely. Before you go, tell me in the comments, have you ever felt your empathy disappear and then slowly return? Write the word reset so I know you watched until the end. And if you're new here, subscribe. You just stepped into a space where your inner world finally makes sense.